we were both on a path and we just threw ourselves into what could we do to help our child develop? And that is good. That is a good thing. And it comes from a good place. What we didn't do is talk about how it would affect me as someone who had intended really to work through the birth of our first few children and really wanted to be on a career track. And then also we didn't talk about how it would affect us as a couple.
They say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom. Your baby's growth matters, but yours does too. You're not alone. I'm your host, Brittany Ming. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Brittany Ming, and today we're talking to Lisa Speers. Lisa transformed her love of journaling into a thriving platform aptly named I Do Part 2. She shares keeping it real marriage stories and advice from experts to strengthen our most important relationships. She also hopes to encourage women who feel stuck and a little lost as their children leave the nest to start pursuing their own dreams. After 35 years of togetherness with her best friend and husband, as well as raising 3 grown children together, Lisa concluded she and her husband will forever be trying to figure each other out. I love that intro. That's awesome.
And that's very true. We're still trying to figure each other out.
Oh, I feel the same way about my husband. And it's only been 15 years. I'm just like, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I so wish not only podcasts were available when my kids were little, but I wish you were around when my kids were little, because you've been such a calming voice.
I wish those same things for myself sometimes. And I think a lot of times for my own journey and like pushing stuff out into the world, I'm like, what can I do to be what I didn't have? You know,
exactly.
What can I do to press something out into the world that I wish I had when I was a young mom? So, and I also wanted to point out that you were the very first financial supporter of the podcast. And I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for believing in this. And I just really appreciate that. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I believe in what you do, and you were helping so many young women. And I was still 25 years later gleaning advice. So it's definitely.
Well, from your intro, you are passionate about marriage. And I love that your focus right now is on helping women transition after the empty nest. And I think that is maybe the second really, really big transition that marriages go through. But I think the first is bringing that baby home, or that, you know, your first pregnancy, or those first 5 years of motherhood where you're like, what is happening to my marriage?
Absolutely.
What is going on with my relationship with my partner? And I just wanted to hear your story about your marriage and what that transition was like when you first had your little ones.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I think my story started like a lot of people and a lot of couples. So when you asked me to share my story, my hope is really that a young mom maybe will hear herself in my story and have a little bit more awareness as she transitions to motherhood. I mean, my husband and I met in college. We dated for 4 years before we got married. We actually intentionally waited 5 years to have our first child. And we just wanted to be ready. We had the luxury of time on our side. And so we waited till, we felt like we had the right jobs and we had gotten our house and we kind of had all our ducks in a row, but nothing really prepared us for the birth of our first child, who was born with multiple developmental delays. And he would eventually be diagnosed with autism and some mental challenges as well. And then we went on to have 2 other children as well. But from the time he was born, and this is what I hope maybe other young moms here, whether they have a child with disabilities or not, is that we were both on a path and we just threw ourselves into what could we do to help our child develop. And that is good. That is a good thing. And it comes from a good place. What we didn't do is talk about how it would affect me as someone who had intended really to work through the birth of our first few children and really wanted to be on a career track. And then also, we didn't talk about how it would affect us as a couple. And for anybody who has had a child with a disability, there's a lot of grief that goes along with that. And we just didn't really talk about it. And I think there were parts of us that, as long as we didn't talk about it, it wouldn't be real, because we were going to fix it. If anybody could fix this, we were going to fix this child. And, fortunately, our other two, I mean, every child's different, but our other two were born typical. And they've, kind of developed, and there's impacts on them to having an older sibling with a disability. But, looking back, I probably would have still decided to stay home. It's just, we didn't have the awareness then to really talk about the impact it was going to have on us as a couple.
Yeah, I think that's so insightful. And it's one of those things that you're like, only in retrospect would we have known to have these conversations. But maybe also hearing these kind of stories can help people have those conversations if they're thinking about having a baby or they're thinking about having a second baby. And I like how you said at the beginning, we waited to have kids, we had this plan. And I'm sure that the plan didn't quite go as you thought when you had your child and you met this person, this little person, and he came into your life and you kind of had to shift that plan. For us, we also had a plan, and our plan did not go anything like we thought.
Right.
Had been married for 8 months, and I remember we had this little bitty house and it was so cute, and there was this weekend that we just talked, when do we want to have kids? And we had decided, like, in 3 years we're going to try to have a baby, because I was about to graduate from college. We had gotten married while I was in school, and my husband was finishing his degree, and the next month I got pregnant.
Yeah, so, it happens.
It does, yeah. And it was twins. So by the time we had been married for 16 months, we had 2 children.
Oh my goodness.
And my husband had to stop going to school. And when I walked with my undergrad degree, I was 5 months pregnant with twins. So our marriage and motherhood or parenthood story started out very different from what we planned. And it was really tough. I think at the time I didn't realize how tough it was, because we were newlyweds and we were in love and all these things. But I look at how we really stumbled through and were kind of dysfunctional those first few years of trying to figure out parenthood and our marriage together. And we got through it, and I love our relationship now, but I see how much the parenthood has shaped both my motherhood and our parenthood story, but it's also shaped our relationship as a couple. And though that integration, I don't think we often talk about. We don't talk about how those things collide and also shape each other, almost like a sculpture, like one sands the other and the other rubs this way, and you come up with something beautiful that looks like your family.
Absolutely. And I think Brittany, your wording on collide is really apropos, because we did not realize that we just didn't have the awareness. We didn't have the preparation on how to deal with all these different issues. And even when we did decide to go to marriage counseling, even the first few marriage counselors, and I often hear people say when they go to counseling, oh, I tried that, it didn't work. It probably doesn't work the first time. I think it rarely now, after 20 years of different counselors, I mean, we've probably worn out 5 different marriage counselors over 30 years. It doesn't always work out. And you really do have to keep trying, because one of the things that seems so clear now along those lines is that our early marriage counselors were trying to fix our marriage. But the reality was there were so many unmet expectations underlying all of this. I didn't expect to have a child that had special needs. And or special abilities, as we often call it today. I had done everything right. I was healthy. I'd taken my natal vitamins. This was not supposed to happen. And so I was dealing with that. And then anyone with one or more children is overwhelmed by a toddler and a baby. And so my kids were all three years apart. And I was trying to mother them in the best way that they needed to be mothered, but I wasn't aware of all that was happening and the effect that having a sibling was having on them. I mean, there was just so much lack of awareness. And I think because I thought I had it all figured out, I just didn't see it at the time, but it's very clear. And when we finally got a counselor that looked at how we were raised and the expectations that we brought into our marriage, that's when things started. I don't know if it's unraveling, but in a good way. It started kind of taking the layers one by one. We were taking these different layers. So to the point now, I feel more connected 30 years in than I did at our wedding. Now, was I in love and excited and, wanted to spend every minute with them when we were getting married? Yes. And I still want to spend a lot of time with him now, but we are connected on a much deeper level because of
Yes.
all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that we often don't look at cultivating intimacy in our marriages. And I'm not talking necessarily about like sexual intimacy, but like emotional intimacy. Like, I see you, I accept you, and I'm here for your trauma journey, or I'm here for your grief, or
Right.
I see you in your struggle and I'm beside you. And I think sometimes it's so hard to find our partner in the middle of the chaos of young parenthood because that transition is so intense. And when we as women are like dissolving into that goop and becoming someone new, we often don't even
Love
know
that.
how to reach out or communicate that to our partner to
Mm-mm.
say, I don't know who I am anymore. And I want to be, your wife or your partner or whatever your relationship looks like. I want to be that friend to you, but I don't even know who I am right now. So it's tough because you're in transition and your relationship is in transition too.
But Brittany, what you just said is key. I didn't even have that awareness. That's what I should have done. I should have sat down and said, I don't know what's happening. I'm not completely happy. I wasn't even really able to identify why I wasn't happy. I had a house, I had 2 cars, I had 3 kids, I had a husband that we got along most of the time. Things were pretty good. And there's a lot of shame in that,
Hmm.
and not in like, why am I not happy? I have it so much better than the next person. I should be happy. And I think it doesn't matter where you are and what your situation is. There is a little shame in that. And I think what you said about just talking, I mean, I think that's the key. That's the key to intimacy, talking about these things, even if you can't identify it, even if you can't name it, still talk about it.
Yeah. I liked what you said there about how you felt sad or you felt, and I'm going to add the word grief on there because
Mhm.
I think that that early transition of motherhood, there is grief. And we just can't put our finger on it a lot of times because you're moving from the person you were to this new person. You're literally becoming somebody new in your insides and your outsides, and your whole world is saying, I'm going to be dedicated to this child that's come into the world. And there is that grief, and then there's that shame because it's like, oh, haven't I been given this all? Don't I have, the house and the child and the husband and the dream that everybody wants? How can I feel sad? But I think we can say, I can be so happy and I'm feeling grief. It's not an either or. And there's so
Absolutely.
much healing that can come from saying both and instead of either or. And I think that there can be a lot of connection with our partner when we say, I'm not really feeling like myself and I'm feeling sad about not being at work anymore, or I'm feeling sad about not connecting with my friends anymore who don't have kids, or I'm figuring out who we are now and that makes me feel weird. So even just having the words to have those conversations can bring connection, hopefully, to couples. going through those
Absolutely. And I
experiences.
think that's key. And I think, if you do feel like something's missing, that was one of the things. And I was constantly trying to fill it with volunteering and helping out with auctions and doing all these things. And they were good things. And so I thought that's what I should be doing. And if you catch the should, I often thought about all these things I should be doing. And I didn't stop to think, but what do I want to do? What part of Lisa isn't happening right now in the midst of motherhood and toddlers and all these kids? What's missing? And that was the awareness you're talking about that I didn't have. And I thought, I look back and think, how did I not see it? Whether, I had stopped writing, I had stopped doing kind of any of the creative parts of me. And it wasn't like, my husband and I were getting along, we were having fun, we were traveling, we were growing friendships through a life group. And so I had all these things, and yet something was still missing. And I think that's the awareness that young moms and couples need to have is, what's missing in this picture?
Hmm. Yeah. How can I feel more like myself? And how can
Yes,
we feel more like ourselves? Because I think that
exactly.
that marriage goes through the goop too. Like that
Oh,
marriage,
completely. And it
you're
still
like,
has days that goes
oh
through
yeah,
the goop.
for sure. For sure. Can you think of a story in your life, maybe like a conversation you had, or even an argument that you guys had that really shifted things as a couple for you to say, "Hey, this is a pivotal moment where I saw us transitioning as a couple to becoming a stronger unit after like young parenthood."
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a conversation when our oldest was about 6. So, we were 11 years into our marriage, 6 years into parenthood. And I remember it very vividly because we were headed out on a vacation. We thought it would be really fun to take a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a newborn and run them around the Pacific Northwest in a car for 6 days. So anyway, anybody who's listening knows that wasn't really a great idea. But anyway, and I could tell my husband was really distracted. And I kept saying, are we going to pack the car? What's going to happen? And he's like, I think we need to talk. And I was like, okay, because that's never good. He had just kind of reached a point where he'd realized maybe before I did, or absolutely before I did, that we were headed down a path that if we continued, it wouldn't be good. And that we had a great thing going. We really connected on all our values. We had such a great foundation and a great start to our marriage. We had just stopped talking about all these different things. And I was an avoider. And at the time, he was a fixer, and we've kind of, worked through that. But that was really a pivotal moment because I could tell how emotionally charged and sad he was. He was really sad at the point we'd reached because we were just kind of going through the motions. We were both, highly motivated to get our stuff done. So he was working really hard outside the home, and I was working really hard with the kids inside the home. And we had just lost our intimacy. We had lost our connection. We hadn't lost our friendship and our respect for each other. We weren't fighting. But as most marriage counselors will tell you, that's a problem too, if you're not even having these discussions. And we were never big like fighters, but we had to learn to really communicate through some of these difficult situations. And I think he looked at the fact that we were going to go spend 6 days in a car together. He just had to get this off his chest. And it turned out to be one of the most beautiful discussions and kind of was this turning point. I was just stuck in the goop too long in the early days. I didn't know how to get out of it. And I was just stuck there until that conversation happened. And I realized I had no choice but to take action.
I really like how you said I was stuck in the goop too long. I think a lot of women can resonate with that. And I know I can. I think you also often feel like that grief, you have to go through it, but you can get stuck in it. And that transition can feel like a really long time before you get out of it. I know, yeah, that resonates with me a lot. As you were talking and I was thinking about my own story and my own marriage, I was thinking, what is a story from my early marriage before
Hmm.
my transition? So the one I'm thinking of, we also, like you, like we're not big fighters. That we talk about a lot of things, but we're good. We are good buddies, good friends. But I feel like whenever we do have a fight, it's one of those big turning point ones for us. So I also have a child with special needs, like
Right.
you do.
Yep.
And my son was 8 before he was diagnosed with autism, but I had been seeing signs for a long time before
Yeah.
that. And my husband was not on the same page with me about looking into diagnosis. And for a while, I went along with it that he's just a boy. He's just, a little bit delayed. We're doing these things. He'll be okay. And this particular fight I'm thinking of, like, I blew up and I was just in that screaming space where I'm like, I need you to take me seriously and I'm scared. And
Right.
we
It
need
is. It's
to,
very scary.
yeah. And I think that fight was even more about us as a couple than it even was about my son, because I needed him to see me and see my fear and see that I was really serious about this. And I needed him to be on my side in looking into this because it was consuming every waking thought for me. And I needed
Right.
him to be with me in that. And
Right.
and he was really kind of shocked at my very strong reaction. And he's like, okay, okay, I hear you, I understand, and we're gonna look into this. When I think back to that fight, I think that's when we kind of came together on the same page and we started working as a team to help my son get the support that he needed to thrive. So that
Right.
included like an IEP and an autism diagnosis, an ADHD diagnosis, and a language processing diagnosis. I mean, like all of
Absolutely.
these things, it kind of opened up this huge Pandora's box. But in my motherhood, I was feeling alone. And that affected the way that I interacted with my husband because I needed him to be alongside me. And so that fight, which was, it was kind of volatile communication, but it was communication, was me saying, my needs are really big right now, and I need you to be a partner with me in those needs so that we can move forward together in this huge life altering thing that's happening to us as a couple and as, parents. It's it's constantly a state of growing, or that's the mindset that we want to have. And I think that can be a life-giving mindset for couples to have,
Absolutely.
because it
Absolutely.
can be really easy to feel like it's me and the baby against him,
Exactly.
or I feel so alone and I don't know how to tell my partner about how I feel because I've never felt this way before.
Right.
So, and even like we've been married for almost 16 years and we've had a lot of practice communicating. But even like my husband's gone right now for military stuff. He's going to be gone for like 6 weeks. And the
Okay.
last time he was gone was when he was deployed a year and a half ago, and it was deployment during COVID in a foreign country. So it
Right.
was really tough.
Yeah.
And so he's been gone a brief amount of time, like 3 days. But yesterday, all the kids were home. We had a snow day, and I felt so, yeah, and he's gone. And I felt this anxiety like just burying me because I was like, oh, it's just like when he was deployed. Like all the kids are home, they're out of school. I can't leave the house because of the snow, but it felt like a COVID not leaving the house. And I confided with some girlfriends how I felt and I texted it to them. But then he texted me at the end of the day and he said, how are you doing? And I was like, not super great. And then he called me and
Nice.
he said, what's going on? And I just sat on the phone for a while in silence because saying the words out loud to him versus texting my girlfriends was a completely different scenario. And he just waited until I could say it. And I had a hard time getting the words out, even
Yeah.
though I'm a writer, I'm a words person. We've been married for X amount of years. Like revealing yourself to your spouse can be scary, but after I said everything, he's like, yeah, I can totally see why you feel anxious today. Like everything adds up. Your body's remembering how it was when I was deployed last time. And even though it's not the same situation, everything yesterday felt the same. And
Right.
I was having this panic about it. And so I'm feeling a lot better today because we
Yeah.
worked through it. But in that moment, when he said, "What's going on the phone?" And I was like, I don't know, even though I knew exactly what was,
Right.
I,
Right.
that stepping into that scary, intimate place is a step towards connection.
Absolutely.
But it's hard. Like that is a hard place to be. And I don't want to minimize that for anybody. So like
No,
trying
no.
to find connection with your spouse after you have a baby, when you're not feeling like yourself, when you're feeling grief, when you're feeling scared, and you keep taking those steps to connect and relate your reality to somebody who's not in your body, like that's an act of bravery.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And there's things I would do differently, but I think one of the key things was that not only that you shared, but your husband had an empathic response and he heard you. You felt heard. And I think so often for young couples and for my husband and I, in particular, is that we didn't always hear each other and we didn't always listen. And even when we listened, we didn't listen with understanding, that we have today. I mean, we really take a moment. Most things can be solved pretty quickly, but there is something so therapeutic and so healing about someone that you care about, especially your most important person, not only hearing you, but validating that they heard you. And that's kind of what I heard through your comment, through your conversation on the phone, in order for you to feel, better today. I mean, that's a huge, huge piece of it. And so I commend you both for
Yeah.
having that.
So for anybody who's listening, like I said, we've been married for 16 years. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even
Absolutely.
3
Yep.
years ago, that wouldn't have been his response. We've had a lot of conversations about, I don't want you to fix me. I just want you to listen. And
Exactly.
even after that, we're dealing with some renovations. And I was like,
Oh, that's hard too.
it's going to take 6 weeks to get these renovations done. And it's going to be such a pain. And he's like, he had a fix it answer. And I'm like, really what I want in this moment is just to complain about renovations because I fully have the right to complain about renovations. And he's like, you are
Yes,
absolutely right. You can complain all you want. And I was like, I know it's going to get done. I just want to complain about it in the meantime.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
I think it's just having that ability to say, I don't want you to fix it. I want you to listen. I want you to be present with me. And for me, also doing the same thing for him. Like just saying what you're going through is hard. It's about saying, I want to enter into your life, even though my life is very different, as a stay-at-home mom and he's the one working, or he's gonna get to golf this weekend on his military traveling thing. I mean, he's still in the States. So he's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do this weekend. I think I'm gonna go golfing. And I'm like, that sounds fun. In my mind, I'm like, man, I wish I could have a weekend off. But I'm like, no, I can't go there. Like this is his reality. And if he gets to go golfing, like I need to be big hearted enough to say, I hope you can have a relaxing weekend because that's his reality. So
Exactly.
it's about having this generous heart, I think, towards the one that we're married to and saying, I want what's best for you because I want him to say that about me. I want him to say, I want what's best for you. So,
Exactly. And then I think also we need to be able to ask for what we need. My husband would go on a business trip and there'd be golf weekends and things, included. And then he would come back and I'd be ticked. I would be passive aggressive. I didn't stop to say, you know what, you've been gone. I know you've been gone and you were working hard, but I need like a few hours break. I didn't say that. I just gutted it out and I just went through the motions and, I was just drowning in goop, to use your term. And I have just, I mean, really only recently, it has been a long process. And I think part of it's the way I was raised, part of it's the generation that I was raised in. I'm in my early 50s, so I'm part of that, Gen X where we just nobody asked us how we felt, and we weren't asked to share our feelings, and not everybody had that experience, but a large number of people, even whether they were born before or after I was. And so I think it's pretty common that a lot of us don't ask for what I need, whether we're the husband or the wife. I think it's important to be
Yeah.
able to do that and to be heard.
Yeah, that's so important. It's saying, I could say the snarky thing, I could say the passive aggressive thing, or I could just ask for what I want. And somehow asking for what you want feels so much more vulnerable and scary than saying like the mean thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, and in our case, we probably just thought it. We didn't even say it,
Yeah.
but there is a feeling. And then what happens is there's a separation in intimacy.
Mhm.
Our spouse comes home, whether it's whoever's staying home and whoever's traveling. If those things aren't reconciled and you don't have that ability to talk through, you may try to be intimate together because that's what you're supposed to do and you haven't seen each other for a week or so, but it doesn't feel great when there's this distance between you and there's these unspoken words. And so that's something that I hope people, are more aware of. It's certainly something I am so much more aware of. And that's why, we kind of work through things so much quicker now than we used to. I'm not quite the avoider that I used to be.
Yeah. I know that between my husband and I can feel when there's something off. There's like that
Mhm.
invisible barrier where you normally feel warm and close to them. But
Right.
when either it's coming from me or it's coming from him, or we had a little tiff, or somebody had a sharp tone, and you feel that frostiness. And so, like, sometimes if you let it go long enough, it'll disappear. But if it's a big thing, like, it's going to grow and grow and grow until there's a whole lot you can't even put your finger on to say what's really going on between us. So resolving the coldness to bring back the warmth, I think, is a really good choice for moving forward in healthy patterns in your relationship, especially when there's a lot of stress that comes in with a new baby or
Right.
even children, because that's a
Right.
really stressful part of life. And so resolving your stuff with your spouse and being teammates and being good friends during that time can help that stressful transition that women are going through.
Yeah. And what does that look like for you and your husband? I mean, I love how you said that. So what does that look like in a practical sense?
Okay, so we went on a date a couple weeks ago, and the whole time he ended up talking about his work, and he didn't really ask me like anything about me. And I was just and then I think something else happened too. But I was just kind of miffed like when we came home from the date, and I was just quiet, and that coldness grew. And he's like,
Right.
"Are you okay?" And I could have said, "Yeah, I'm fine." But I like I was upset about it, and I was like, "Well, the date really didn't go like I wanted it to." And I think I had a lot of expectations too, because we hadn't
Right.
gone out in a really
Expectations.
long time. And I
Yep.
wanted it to be like this magical connecting time for us because it'd been months since we had gone out to a restaurant together. And I was like, it just didn't go like he wanted it to. Oh, he also didn't say, "You look really nice." I wanted him to say, "You look really nice," because I actually like did my hair and makeup, and he didn't say, "You look really nice."
Yeah.
So I was
Right.
mad about that. And then I was mad that he talked about his stupid work the whole time, even though I was like trying to like be an empathetic listener. But I'm like, I kind of wanted you to like ask about my life. And so I said that. I'm like, I'm sad that you didn't say I look nice. And then you talked about your work the whole time, and like you didn't ask anything about me. And then I kind of cried a little bit. And then, and then he's like, "I'm sorry, you're right." And then like we felt closer. And then he probably said something to make me laugh because that's his thing. Like he just makes me laugh.
Right.
And then we felt closer. Or I that chilliness went away because what I was miffed about, I said it out loud. And he said, "I'm sorry." And then the next time we went out, we had a better date. So
Absolutely. And sometimes it's that simple. But there were times, when I was young in marriage where we had that exact same thing happen, and we did go to bed kind of angry at each other. because we weren't having these big fights. We were just having these kind of silent disagreements.
Mm.
And that silence just really creates a gap between, you and your spouse, and just really has a negative impact on intimacy for sure. Oh, it's so complicated. There's so much.
There is so much. I think we could talk about this forever. I think
Exactly.
one more thing I was thinking about was that I really tried to remember that my husband can't read my mind.
Oh, that's a
And
biggie. That is
and
such a biggie.
I have made this a huge point with my kids, especially my autistic son, where he'd have these big meltdowns and I'm like, you have to tell me what's going on with you, because I cannot read your mind. I cannot read your mind. You have to tell me what's going on with you. And I've had to really say, well, my husband is the same way. He can't read my mind and I can't
Right.
read his mind. So if I'm upset, I just have to tell him. And if he's upset, he just has to tell me, because it's not fair for me to say he should know why I'm mad, because he should have said, you look really pretty tonight, and he should have known that about me. But he can't read my mind, so
No, they
I just have to
can't.
tell him, like, hey, I'm kind of sad that you didn't say I looked really pretty tonight on our date, and then he can know next time.
Yeah, I think that's super, super important.
Yeah, I think we've talked about, I'm looking at this fourth question that I said I was going to ask you. And it's, what would you tell another woman who's walking the same path as you did? I think we brought up so many good, touch points of advice. But if you're looking back, if you had a young mom, first baby or first 5 years of her motherhood, and she was saying, how do I navigate my marriage? How do I be a good wife or a good partner right now? What do you think you would tell her? Maybe one or two things.
Oh, absolutely. I think awareness is key. We are all so in tune to what's happening. We feel it in our bodies. It's like what happened to you yesterday when you just felt like the stress was coming down on you. And there were times that happened to me. And I felt like instead of sharing what was happening in my body and how I was feeling, I thought I should be able to figure this out. Everyone else has got this figured out. I should be able to do it. Moms have been moms for the millennia, and something must be wrong. I must be doing something wrong to not have this figured out. And, we just talked about, marriage challenges and toddlers and kids, but there's financial challenges. There's, depending on what part of the country you're in, the COVID challenges that are happening. There's always going to be something. So my biggest thing would be, if you feel off, talk to someone. It might be your mom, it might be your dad, it might be your spouse, but just have that awareness, because just sharing it and having someone hear you is going to take down some of the stress. And then maybe somebody who is looking at you with a different perspective can give you some really, really helpful advice.
Yeah.
So be able to ask for help.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think that it's vulnerable and that's a brave choice, but I think that's always a path towards connection and healing, both like within ourselves and the most important relationships that we have in our lives. So
Yeah.
really good.
And I can tell you time and time again, just real quickly, that sitting here 25 years into motherhood, all of the friends that I have right now, we've had this conversation. Why did we not tell each other that it was hard? Why did we not share daytime childcare duties? Why did we not do more things together? But we were all so, I guess, full of pride. I don't know. I mean, we just thought we should have it figured out, and we didn't. And it's okay. It's okay. But ask for help. If you need help, ask for help.
Yeah. Just somebody to say, hey, can you share my load? And I'm going to be
Yes.
beside you to share your load too. Like, let's do life together.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Instead, a lot of us spend a lot of time by ourselves, all thinking the same thing.
Yes. Yes, we all are saying that is so true. We all are thinking the same thing. Yeah,
Exactly.
All right, to end our time, I have these 10 rapid fire
Oh,
questions that are
goodness.
just for fun.
Okay.
So, are you ready?
Yep.
All right. Which Disney princess would you want to take out to coffee?
I remember you asking me this, and I do not have a Disney princess that I would have taken out to coffee.
That's okay.
I would have gone to coffee with a friend.
Yes, that's good.
That's my honest answer.
I like that. I like that answer. You pick a friend, somebody you feel close to. That's great. What's one thing you must have on your nightstand?
Water.
Your go-to treat after the kids would go to bed. So maybe not now, but when they were little, what was your go-to treat?
I don't remember little now, but I love that there's this popcorn with a little sweet and a little salty on it. And I love that. So that's kind of my go-to treat.
An ordinary moment that brings you great joy.
When my kids call me, my daughter pretty much FaceTimes me going across campus every day. My son, not so much, love him dearly, but I don't hear from him as much. But when the kids just call for no reason and don't need anything, or my daughter, when she walks across campus, brings me a lot of joy.
That's special. The last show you binged and loved?
We've just been binging Inventing Anna.
Oh, somebody else just said that show. I have that in another interview. So yeah.
And I heard about it on the news and just watching it. And I'm just, and even at the end trying to figure out, was she mentally ill? Was she just really trying to find her place in life? I mean, or is it all the above? So I don't have an answer.
I'll have to check that one out because I haven't watched it. So that's a good recommendation. If you run out of this besides milk, you have to go to the store.
Eggs.
Who makes you laugh?
Kids and my husband. We have a share thread, and we're always sending around funny memes and funny TikToks, and then depending on what it is, the comments that come afterwards, they're making fun of me for doing something, or my husband, or the kids, or what have you. So definitely my family.
That's great. Sometimes the comments are even funnier than the original.
Yes, meme. Absolutely. Yep.
When you were 5 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Definitely in grade school, I wanted to be an Olympic swimmer.
Oh, that's great. Were you a swimmer?
I was only a swimmer through like 8th grade.
Okay. The dream was strong.
The dream was really strong, but I do remember it, especially with the Olympics just happening. I'm like, I wonder if I had gone for it, Anyway, I don't know.
That's great.
I'll never know.
You never know. Nope. What are you looking forward to?
Just all these new opportunities. I've made some new connections and collaborations with women lately. And so I'm just excited about where that journey takes me. And I'm excited about this empty nesting journey that my husband and I are on. So I'm really excited about what's to come in the next few years.
I think that's such a great perspective to have. And that's really hopeful for maybe women who have older kids, or, if they're at the beginning of their motherhood journey and they think like, what is my marriage or my life going to look like when I have an empty nest? So it's really hopeful to hear you say that. All right, last one. Finish this sentence. Motherhood is
a journey.
Yep, for sure. All right. If you would like to follow Lisa on social media, you can find her at idopart2.com, and just recently at Better Than Gossip, Ageless Advice for Timeless Women, which, sidebar, that is the best title for a podcast ever.
Oh, good.
But she's collaborating with 3 other amazing women that include a podcast and its own on-demand streaming show. So you can check it out at betterthangossip.com or on Facebook or Instagram at Better Than Gossip. I'm so excited. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yes, thank you.
Really excited.
We don't launch for a few more weeks, but there's a lot of information available right now on social media. So we're just getting everything underway and prepared. So I'm very excited. So thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for being here today, Lisa. I loved our conversation.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyaming@gmail.com.